I spent the better part of 20 years trusting steel brackets, Simpson strong ties, lag bolts, hurricane clips, you name it. If it was metal and it held wood together, I figured it was the strongest option available. And honestly, for most of what I build in my shop, that thinking never got challenged. Then about 4 years ago, I started reading about earthquake damage in California and Japan, and something stopped me cold. Modern buildings with steel connections were cracking, twisting, sometimes collapsing entirely. And right next to them, ancient wooden temples, some built over 1,000 years ago, were still standing. No steel, no bolts, no glue, just wood locked into wood. And these buildings had survived dozens of major earthquakes over the centuries. That didn't make any sense to me. Steel is stronger than wood. Everyone knows that. So how were these old timber structures outperforming modern engineering? I had to find out. And what I learned completely changed how I think about joinery, about strength, and about what it really means for a structure to survive. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly how these ancient joints work, why they outperform steel brackets in the conditions that matter most, and what modern engineers are only now starting to understand about them. Plus, stick around to the end, because I've got a joint fitting technique from this tradition that I brought into my own shop, and it's one of the most useful things I've picked up in years. Let's get into it. What we're really talking about today is a fundamental question that most of us never stop to ask. What does it actually mean for a connection to be strong? Because, as it turns out, the answer isn't as simple as we've been taught. And a tradition of woodworking that's over 2,000 years old has a lot to teach us about getting that answer right. So let me give you some background on where this approach comes from, because the context matters. China sits in one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. The eastern edge of the Tibetan Plateau, the Pacific Ring of Fire, major fault lines running through populated areas. Earthquakes aren't a hypothetical there. They're a regular fact of life. And for most of Chinese history, wood was the primary building material. Not because they didn't have stone. They did. But they learned early on that rigid stone structures crumbled in earthquakes while wooden ones survived. So over roughly 2,000 years, Chinese builders developed a system of interlocking wooden brackets and joints that could support enormous roof structures, multi-story pagodas, and sprawling temple complexes, all without a single metal fastener. The system is called dugong, and it's built on a principle that sounds almost backward to our modern ears. Instead of making connections as rigid and strong as possible, they made them flexible. They designed joints that could move, shift, and absorb energy. And the guiding philosophy behind it is something I'd translate roughly as yield to survive. The idea is that a structure that bends with force will outlast one that tries to resist it. When I first encountered that idea, I'll admit, it sounded more like poetry than engineering. But the physics behind it are rock solid, and that's what I want to show you. Let's start with why steel brackets aren't as strong as we think they are. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying steel brackets are bad. I still use them. They have their place. But we need to understand what happens when you bolt a piece of steel to a piece of wood and then subject that connection to dynamic force, the kind of force you get in an earthquake, a heavy wind event, or even just decades of seasonal wood movement. When you drive a bolt through a piece of wood and cinch it down to a steel plate, you create what engineers call a stress riser. That's a point where force concentrates instead of spreading out. Think about it this way. The bolt hole is a hard, fixed point in a material that naturally wants to flex and move. When lateral force hits that connection, all the energy funnels right to that bolt hole. The wood fibers around it crush, split, or tear out. I've seen this happen on my own projects. A lag bolt that was rock solid for 5 years suddenly has a 1/4 inch of play because the wood around it has been slowly crushed by seasonal movement. And the steel itself has problems over time. Metal fatigues. Every stress cycle, every vibration, every load and unload weakens it microscopically. A steel bracket that tests at 2,000 pounds of shear strength on day one might be significantly weaker after 10 years of cyclical loading. Then there's corrosion. Even galvanized hardware degrades, especially in humid environments or when it contacts treated lumber. I've pulled brackets off 15-year-old deck structures and found them pitted and weakened to maybe 60% of their original capacity. The real issue is this: a bolted steel connection fights force. It says, "I will not move." And it holds that promise right up until the moment it can't, and then it fails catastrophically. There's very little middle ground. It's either holding or it's broken. Now here's where the dugong system does something completely different, and this is the part that really opened my eyes. A dugong bracket set is a series of interlocking wooden arms and blocks that stack on top of a column to support the massive overhanging eaves of a Chinese roof. If you've ever seen a traditional Chinese temple or pagoda, those wide, sweeping roofs that extend way out past the walls, the dugong is what makes that possible. Here's how it works. You start with a column, typically a large timber of Chinese fir or camphor wood, sometimes 16 to 20 inches in diameter. On top of that column sits the first tier of the bracket set. It's a carved wooden block with a cross piece fitted into it. No nails, no glue, just a precisely cut interlocking shape. Then another block sits on top of that, rotated at a different angle with another cross piece, and another on top of that. Each tier steps outward, cantilevering further from the column until the uppermost tier supports the roof beam. A single dugong bracket set might have 5 to 7 tiers, with dozens of individual wooden components, and not one fastener holding them together. They stay in place through gravity, compression, and the precision of the joinery. The fit is tight enough that the pieces don't rattle, but loose enough that they can shift microscopically under load. And here's the critical part. Because the roof is so heavy, often weighing several tons with its clay tiles, all that weight presses down through the bracket tiers and actually locks them tighter together. The more load you add, the stronger the connection gets. That's the opposite of a bolted connection, where more load means more stress on the bolt hole. The wood species matter here too. Chinese fir, which is similar to our Western red cedar in weight, but with a straighter, more consistent grain, has just enough flexibility to absorb micro-movements without cracking. Camphor wood, which they used for critical structural members, has natural oils that resist insect damage and decay for centuries. By the way, if you are enjoying learning about these ancient methods, I put together something I think you will really appreciate. It is called Kenji's Workshop, and it is a collection of 100 ancient Eastern woodworking secrets for the modern craftsman. Techniques like the ones we are covering today, and a whole lot more. You can grab your copy by scanning the QR code on screen or just use the first link in the description. All right, let us keep going. Now that you understand how the dugong is built, let me show you what happens when an earthquake actually hits one of these structures, because this is where the genius really shows. When seismic waves travel through the ground and hit a building, they're sending energy into the structure. A rigid structure, like a modern steel-framed building, tries to resist that energy. The frame holds its shape as long as it can, and the energy has nowhere to go except into the connections. That's where things break. A dugong timber frame does the opposite. When the ground shakes, those interlocking bracket tiers start to shift against each other. Not much. We're talking about fractions of an inch. But each tiny movement between each tier creates friction, and that friction converts kinetic energy into heat. The energy gets absorbed and dissipated across dozens of contact surfaces instead of concentrating at a few bolt holes. Engineers call this hysteretic damping, and it's the same principle behind modern earthquake dampers that cost tens of thousands of dollars to install in skyscrapers. These ancient builders figured it out with carved wood blocks. And here's the other half of the equation. Wood naturally expands and contracts with humidity changes. In a bolted connection, that movement works against you. The wood pushes and pulls on the bolt, crushing fibers over time. But in a friction-fit joint system like the dugong, that same wood movement is actually a feature. The joints breathe with the seasons. They loosen slightly in humid summer months and tighten in dry winter months. The connection stays alive instead of slowly degrading. The self-tightening effect under compression is the detail that really got me. When a dugong joint is loaded, the weight above it actually seats the components more firmly together. It's like a Chinese finger trap for structural timber. Pull on it, and it grips harder. The more the building weighs, the more stable the joints become. That's engineering elegance that's hard to argue with. Once I understood the physics, I started looking at the historical evidence, and it's staggering. The Yingxian Pagoda in Shanxi Province, China, is a 67-meter-tall, all-timber structure built in 1056. That's almost 1,000 years ago. It has survived at least 7 major earthquakes, including a magnitude 6.1 event in 1966. It's still standing, no steel, no concrete, just interlocking wood. The Forbidden City in Beijing, built in the early 1400s, contains over 9,000 rooms supported by dugong bracket systems. It has survived over 200 earthquakes in 600 years. A team of engineers actually built a scale model of a Forbidden City hall on a shake table in 2017 and subjected it to a simulated magnitude 10.1 earthquake. The model swayed, the joints shifted, and absorbed energy exactly as designed, and the structure survived intact. Now compare that to a typical modern wood frame house with steel brackets. Building codes assume a service life of roughly 50 years. Hurricane clips and joist hangers have a projected lifespan of about 20 to 30 years before corrosion becomes a concern, and that's in a dry climate. In coastal or humid regions, you might be looking at 15 years before those connections start to weaken. I'm not saying a modern house is going to fall down in 15 years, but I am saying that a system designed around metal fasteners requires ongoing inspection and replacement in a way that a well-built timber frame with friction-fit joinery simply doesn't. The dugong system is essentially maintenance-free for centuries as long as the wood is protected from direct water contact and insect damage. This next part is what really drove the lesson home for me. Modern architects and structural engineers are actually circling back to these principles. Researchers at institutions in China, Japan, and increasingly in the United States and Europe are studying dugong mechanics and applying them to contemporary timber construction. There are firms designing multi-story mass timber buildings that use interlocking connection systems inspired directly by ancient Chinese bracket sets. And here's an interesting wrinkle. Tall all-timber construction today is actually limited more by building codes than by the capabilities of the material. Most codes were written with steel and concrete in mind, and they impose requirements that assume rigid connections. A flexible, energy-dissipating timber frame doesn't fit neatly into those code categories, even though the historical evidence suggests it performs better in seismic events than the rigid systems the codes were designed around. In 2021, the International Building Code was updated to allow mass timber buildings up to 18 stories, which was a major step. But the connection methods approved are still mostly steel-based. The irony is real. We have 1,000 years of proof that fastener-free timber connections survive earthquakes, and our modern codes still require us to bolt everything together with metal. Let me share some patterns I've noticed over the years, things I used to do myself that this tradition handles completely differently. No judgment here. I did all of these for longer than I'd like to admit. The first pattern is reaching for the biggest, heaviest bracket you can find. Most of us think that a bigger bracket means a stronger connection. But as we've seen, a bigger bracket just means a bigger stress riser, more bolt holes, more concentrated force points, more places for the wood to fail. The traditional approach uses more contact surface area and distributes load across multiple interlocking faces instead of concentrating it at a few bolt holes. The second pattern is making joints as tight and immovable as possible right from the start. I used to crank down bolts until the wood compressed, thinking tighter meant stronger. But a joint that has zero room to move is a joint that's fighting the wood's natural behavior. The traditional approach leaves just enough room for the wood to breathe, and the compression from the structure's own weight does the tightening naturally over time. The third pattern is treating wood movement as a problem to solve instead of a feature to use. We spend enormous energy trying to prevent wood from expanding and contracting, using kiln-dried lumber, sealing end grain, slotting screw holes. The dugong tradition works with wood movement. The seasonal expansion and contraction actually helps maintain the joints. The fourth pattern is assuming that if a connection fails, you just need a stronger connection. When a bracket pulls out, we install a bigger bracket. When a bolt shears, we use a thicker bolt. But sometimes the problem isn't the strength of the connection, it's the type of connection. A rigid connection in a dynamic environment will always eventually fail. A flexible connection that dissipates energy can last indefinitely. The good news is, once you see these patterns for what they are, you start thinking about every joint differently. Now for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning. This is something I adapted from studying how traditional Chinese joiners fit their bracket components, and I've been using it in my own shop for about 3 years now. When they fit two interlocking faces, they don't just cut to a line and test the fit. They use a thin paste made from camellia oil and fine stone dust, almost like a machinist's marking compound, and they apply it to one face of the joint. Then they press the two pieces together and pull them apart. The high spots show as shiny marks where the paste was displaced, and the low spots stay coated. They pare away only the high spots and repeat until the contact is uniform across the entire face. I adapted this in my shop using a mix of mineral oil and 400 grit aluminum oxide powder. I brush it onto one cheek of a tenon, press it into the mortise, pull it out, and I can see exactly where the contact is heavy and where there are gaps. Before I started doing this, I was guessing at my fits. Now I can see them. My tenon cheeks come out with full, even contact across the whole surface, and the joints are noticeably tighter and more consistent than anything I was getting before. It takes about 5 extra minutes per joint, and it's worth every second. One more thing before I let you go. I spent a long time gathering the best ancient Eastern woodworking methods I have come across, and I put them all into a book called Kenji's Workshop. 100 techniques that most modern woodworkers have never seen, with step-by-step photos and clear explanations you can actually follow in your shop. Scan the QR code on screen right now, or grab it from the first link in the description. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one.